Welcome to the Clifton Worley Show. This week we have Adam Rohrer. What's up, man?
Hey, Clifton. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We've kind of been running in the same circles here for the last couple years, and uh, it's ironically like this is the first chance we've had to actually have a one-on-one talk, and I thought it'd be cool to kind of just hear how you got into playing music and kind of what you do, and we kind of go from there. I know that recently you've been doing a little bit of recording, and we can talk about that. And so, well, first of
Sure.
all, tell us where you're from.
I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, so that's about 90 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like cattle country. Uh,
Lots
yeah.
of cattle country. I mean, there's a decent sized city with like a really good music and art scene, probably 60 to 70,000 people in Lancaster City, but yeah, that's just a central of Lancaster County, and then everything around that is a lot of farmland and dairy farms and things.
Yeah. So born and raised, or
No, I was born in Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida.
oh, okay.
Lived there a couple years, and then I lived in Virginia for probably 6 or 7 years in the Norfolk area,
Yeah.
not far from Virginia Beach.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Well, how did this start for you, like playing guitar and everything?
Um, Guitar. Well, I mean, I think I just started playing guitar because I loved music. I loved bands. I loved punk bands. So I wanted to emulate all the bands that I like. But I mean, I took a lot of music lessons growing up. My dad is a phenomenal musician, one of the best musicians I know. He majored in music in college and minored in organ performance. Fun fact. Um,
Nice.
so so he's just a great musician, could read music for he was a very good trumpet player, and so kind of growing up he was just kind of like, hey, what do you want to play, and we can do it, I can teach you. So I tried several different things. I tried the saxophone, trumpet, those kind of things. They didn't really stick, but I did take piano lessons for probably 5 years early on. I sort of got into percussion. I played percussion and snare drum and timpani and stuff in the high school concert band and stuff. But I don't know. I think it was probably my 15th or probably more like my 16th birthday. My dad surprised me with a guitar, just one of the Squier starter
Mm-hmm.
packages, with a terrible little amp. But that was a black Squier Telecaster, and I've been a Telecaster guy ever since.
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. And that guitar, I don't have it in my possession anymore, but my brother has the neck. He did a guitar project with the neck, and then my other buddy has the body. He's building a guitar using that body, so it's being put to good use at least.
Well, that's cool. It's two different places and two different people that you know using the same guitar. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, so you're saying you grew up and your dad's playing music and that's kind of in the background. And
yeah.
was it punk music that grabbed you towards guitar?
It really did. I mean, growing up in like the church and stuff, I listened to a lot of, all those Christian
Mm-hmm.
kind of punk bands. I mean, I guess MXPX to an extent, and Slick Shoes, and Craig's Brother, and Five Iron Frenzy, that kind of stuff. I think that's probably what drew me to the guitar. I loved music, and that was the music that I just was enthralled with. So I just wanted to be like those guys. So so we started a band with some of my friends and writing music and playing out, and I did that for a couple years in high school.
How far did that evolve at the time?
Um, I mean, we played just local shows, nothing major, but we definitely had, we probably played dozens of shows. I mean, playing out with other high school type punk bands, we definitely ran into a lot of awful bands. So like, we were probably like, we're like, oh, well, they're terrible, much worse than we are. But then you see the bands who are like making it, and they're still, you see these 18-year-old bands who are getting signed to Tooth and Nail and that kind of thing. We're so far from what they were. So, we're kind of middle of the road kind of okay, but not great,
Yeah, yeah. So at this point, you were living where?
This was in Lancaster. I mean, have lived in Lancaster now since I was probably 10 years old, so
Okay.
I consider myself Lancastrian because I've lived here for 25 years now.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, so now you do some with praise and worship as well. I noticed a lot of your Facebook posts and things like that. Like you're playing in church and like you were playing, I think, bass this last weekend. And talk about that for a minute. Like, how'd you get into that, and kind of what's your role there, and what do you do?
Yeah, I my church is called Life Church. We're just a non-denominational church in Lancaster here. Um, Currently, I'm just a guitar player there. In the past, I have led the whole worship
Mm-hmm.
team until we, excuse me, until we hired a guy. We were fine. Our church is fairly young. We've only been in existence for about 7 years now, so we kind of got to the point where we're going to hire somebody, and it's a position that I could have applied for, but I chose not to because I was essentially doing all that volunteer. Um, so yeah, I'm just happy to kind of sit back and play guitar and sing every once in a while. I'll do that a few times a month, but I mean, that's pretty much the only music I'm doing. I mean, I'm writing a lot outside of that, but I'm not really performing much other than that. A few years ago, I was performing a lot out, it's kind of one or the other because I was performing so much, like on the weekends in a band and in this gigging group that I just didn't have any time for the church thing, and so that was kind of I don't know, that kind of ran its course, and then I kind of dove into the church music just because I don't know, I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, so when it comes to guitar playing, are you trying to kind of cover the songs like the recording? Are you what's kind of your process? Are you doing your own thing?
For the church
Yeah.
stuff, you mean? Yeah, I try and play like I mean, I play a lot of lead guitar there, so I try and play the lead parts exactly as they're recorded. That's not always possible because sometimes they're using like, a lot of recording tricks to get the guitar sounds that you're not going to be able to do live. But um, it's honestly been like a really good practice for me to do that. It's over the past 5 years or whatever that I've been playing there. I've become a lot better guitar player just because it forces me to sit down and learn a part and kind of use my effects and see how they're making that sound and stuff. So I primarily play electric guitar there.
Yeah. Well, that's really fun, I think, to do. I'm mainly like a acoustic player, and I love acoustic, but I really envy, like, if I probably wasn't leading, like I would definitely be wanting to play electric guitar because that's kind of where I think I would like to kind of use my skills and everything.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the Telecaster earlier. Are you still a Telecaster man?
The Telecaster is my first love for sure. Yeah, one of my guitars is a Creston Telecaster. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Yeah, I've
company.
seen those. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's a builder out of Vermont. Honestly, I can't even quite remember how I got turned on to him. Probably like 5 years ago. It might have been through a podcast of some sort. But there's guys in the industry like Tim Marcus from Milkman Amps. He's always singing their praises, and I know Gabriel Tenorio. He's a big Creston fan too. But yeah, I mean, I wanted one of his guitars for several years, and finally just kind of pulled the trigger, and yeah, I love it. It actually is a P90 in the neck, and then just a Telecaster
Yeah.
pickup in the bridge. But yeah, that's one of my guitars. My other one is a Balaguer archetype. It's like almost a Strat shape, like an Ibanez RG type of shape. Um, and that is kind of looks like a metal guitar, but I love it. It's just so comfortable to play and light.
No, that was what brand was that again?
That's a Balaguer.
Balaguer.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah, so I'm actually on the artist team there. That's sort of a new thing as of a couple weeks ago. But um, so Joe, the owner, Joe Balaguer, he's based out of Pottstown, Pennsylvania, which is sort of outside of Philadelphia, only about an hour away from me. And I kind of met him, I don't know, probably 4 years ago, just online, and sort of followed what he was doing. I met up with him in person a couple years ago, and just had some really good conversations with him. And I just think he's doing really unique things, and making really cool guitars. So I don't know. I really like to support local people if they're doing really cool things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I don't know what he meant by this, but Tim Ballant asked me to ask you about a Bel Air.
Oh yeah, yeah. So one of my amps is an earthquake engineering amplification Bel Air. The Bel Air is the model.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know Adam Magoon. He's in some of the groups, but he makes these amps. I honestly don't know if he's doing it much anymore. I think he's kind of doing it real small on the side, from what I understand. But I know that Kyle Smith has one of his amps, and I'm sure you're familiar with Kyle Smith. But
Yes.
so I just talked to him. I probably had this thing for 2 or 3 years now. But one of my favorite amps I ever owned is a Fender Bassman, a blackface 1966 Bassman. So I had that for a while, and I love that amp. Just how full and the clean sound, the overdriven sound is kind of exactly what I was looking for in an amp. But the thing was just so darn loud that it was kind of
Yeah.
unusable for me at home, or definitely not at church or wherever I was playing at the time. So anyway, Adam kind of makes this amp that's, and to me, very similar. It's a Fender Blackface style amp, but with like a hot rodded circuit. Um, anyway, I love that amp, and they're insanely reasonable compared to like insanely reasonably priced. I mean, compared to other quote unquote boutique amps. Yeah, I just think he does really cool stuff. I think Kyle got more of like a Princeton circuit, and he always says good things about his too. But yeah, I think Adam just kind of did that on the side, so he wasn't a prominent name in the industry just because he wasn't doing it full time. But I mean, his stuff is very quality, and that's my main amp right now. Yeah.
Now you just got a Mesa Boogie about a week or so ago, right?
Yeah, I did. Funny thing, I was so I was looking at a very specific Mesa amp. It was a Mesa Subway Rocket. So I was searching demos and stuff on YouTube of the Mesa Subway Rocket. It's just a small, like, I think it's 22 watts, um, and it's just really good cleans and cool overdrive sound. So anyway, I was searching demos on YouTube, and I ran across your cousin Tim. He has several demos of his Subway Rocket up there. So just as I was clicking through these demos, I was like, oh, I know who that guy is. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, I know that he always, has high praise for his amp. So I got that, and I love it. I mean, you don't normally think of Mesa as like really good clean tone, but the clean tone on this amp is like one of the best I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's is that a 6L6 6V6?
Yeah. Yep.
It's the 6L6.
Yeah, 606.
Okay. Okay. So I'm kind of thinking like that's along the lines of like maybe like if you was comparing to Fender like the deluxe size probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, like, as far as the size goes, it's a really good size. It's very light too, which is surprising. Just because you even like the little combo amps, like the little like AC-15s, they can be backbreaking sometimes when you're lugging those around.
That's cool. So what's your plans for this one? Are you gonna gig like bring it back and forth from church and play, or what do you have in mind for it?
Um, Dude, I don't even know, you know. It was just kind of one of those things that was filling a void in the sounds that I could get with my other stuff. Um, I sort of had a plan to buy one of the new Milkman,
Yeah.
the amp that's coming out. I like have had that in my mind for a while, and then I ended up, finding one of these for a great deal that I could get for like half the price of that Milkman. So I was like, I'm just gonna pull the trigger.
Yeah, yeah. I've played Tim's. It's been a while since I've have, but I remember really liking it and thinking it was a really cool amp. The Milkman, that's kind of been on my radar too. But I was looking, like, it came up in some thread because I've actually been thinking about getting some kind of like amp sim, speaker sim type thing, so
Yeah.
I could just play off a pedal board and not
Yep.
have an amp. Um, and somebody had mentioned that, and it was like, oh, it's still not available. And I was like, oh man, like I I want to. I think if I were going to go that direction, like it'd be something I would have to go spend some time with in a store, or
Right.
just try it out, make sure that that's what I wanted to do, or could somehow like get it, and if I didn't like it, be able to like turn around and just pass it along.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of what I was. The cool thing about that Milkman amp, the new one coming out, is that to me it's kind of like a hybrid between tube amp and then an amp uh, like a Helix or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So you still get the analog feel, but you don't feel like you're completely selling out.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that I think Michael Newman has had this is it amplifier box, is that what it's called?
Yep. Yep.
I've been wanting to try one of those. That might be a good solution.
Yeah, there's so many good cab sim type solutions. I feel like the problem with most of them is that they can be quite pricey if they're good.
Hmm.
I mean, I've tried like the Joyo pedals, and that was fine. I mean, I'm talking about for running direct. I tried the Joyo pedal, that was fine. I had a Hughes and Kettner Tube Meister, so I would run just direct in church with that. It has an XLR in the back and a cab sim built in,
Hmm.
and that was cool too. But then it just like it never worked too well with my pedals, and I don't know. I like that amp. It always sounded good for recording, but for the live situation, it didn't quite do what I was looking for. So.
Yeah. Well, so when you're playing, are you guys like kind of tell me about your setup and how you approach your rig and everything?
When I'm playing in church, you mean?
Yeah.
Or yeah, so I play electric every week, I'm usually using that Bel Air amp, although I the past couple times I've used my Mesa. And then we're just miking the amps with, just SM57s or whatever. Um, and then yeah, using my Balaguer or Crescent guitar. And then I have my pedal board. As far as like the whole band, we usually have the leader, the worship leader. He usually plays electric. He usually leads from electric also, especially if I'm playing. So it's kind of a fun, big rocking time usually. I don't know. I look at some of these other like videos and stuff on some of the praise and worship pages, and I feel like our church is a lot more rock and roll than most. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just I just didn't. You don't really realize that until you see what other people are doing.
Yeah. Are you guys like, and I ask this because it's like it's one extreme or the other. Are you guys like doing wedges on stage, or are you doing in ears?
We're doing wedges. We probably 4 years ago we finally put the money into getting like a nice sound system, and we got the X32 board, which is kind of a standard in a lot of churches our size now. But we had that conversation, and we all kind of decided wedges was what we wanted, and it works really well for us. Um, I understand the pros and cons of in-ears too, so I don't know. That's another discussion later down the road, but I really like the wedges.
Yeah, me too.
Just
I'm kind of a
for me
sucker for it.
personally, it just yeah, and we got like nice stuff. So as long as you have like good equipment, it just for me it feels more like that you're playing live rather than you're like playing to a track or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I know, like, the biggest hurdle for me, because I've tried in ears and I've had, like, one pretty good experience with it. And then, like, in our church situation, like, it never sounded like it had clarity to it. And that could be, a lot that might need to be being done at the board to make that happen. But it seems like with wedges, like I can get a pretty good mix, and the other band members, running like two mixes, and
Right.
the other band members can get what they want pretty close, and it sounds pretty good on stage. Now, I think the only complaint we've had is like sometimes the stage volume. They have to turn it down in the house because like we're running it so hot on stage, and people out in the audience, what they hear um, is probably a lot of it coming out of the monitors, kind of bouncing around instead of like directly from the front of house. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but
Right.
I don't know. I'm just kind of that's what works with us, and my band members feel comfortable with. So we've kind of rolled with that too. And I love wedges. Like it just there's a presence there that you can't get
Yeah,
with
I
the in-ears.
agree too. Even coming from like playing in rock bands and stuff
Yeah,
in my younger years, it just kind of just feels natural rather than I think the in-ear monitors I've used them and they're just not natural. I was playing drums in a church. So I was part of a house church network for 7 years, like right after my wife and I got married, and we were doing that for 7 years, and we loved that. And then that kind of just ran its course and folded the house church network that we were part of. So we were sort of looking around, and while I wasn't attending a church, I got hooked up to play drums at this church. Um, I also played drums, by the way. I played drums before I started playing guitars
nice.
as a teenager, but so I played drums in this church, and it was my first experience playing in like a big church with like a drum cage and everything's mic'd up. You have your own personal monitor mix and everything. But yeah, that was just strange to me, just being isolated in a cage with in ears, and I mean, it just didn't feel like you're playing with other people, really.
Yeah, yeah. That's been a struggle. Like for me, like having to lead and everything. I feel like if I
Yeah,
can't connect very well with the congregation and the audience, then that's a barrier for me. And if maybe if I was just a music director, that might be a little bit different. But I don't know. Like I just don't like that disconnect from the audience. That kind of bothers me a little bit. I guess it's people who learn to do it well, and you know, obviously it doesn't seem to hinder them.
right. And we purchased that X32 digital board a few years ago. I love that thing, but there's even so much uh, capabilities that it has that we're not currently using.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason is we meet in a middle school. It's a very, very old building, and they're actually tearing it down next year. But we just purchased our own building, so we're moving into that in a couple months. So once we get into that, we'll actually have Wi-Fi and everything you need to
Yeah,
have to be able to fully use the X32. We'll be able to adjust monitors on stage and stuff, which we don't have that capability right now. But
yeah,
just stuff like that.
yeah. So we just got a digital board probably about a year ago, and we have that capability, but it's so rare like that I uh, do that. I think I've only tried it a couple times.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's so much easier to be like, hey, sound man, can you you know, can you give me a little more bass, and
yeah,
this, and then like just save it. And like when you're playing the same, and this probably differs with different people, but like when you play the same stage every week in the same room, and you have the digital board where you can save those profiles, like you can pull it
Yeah.
up and like your monitor mix every now and then it'd be like, well, I need to hear a little bit more of this, whatever. But I mean, it gets dialed in after a while, and
Yeah.
you know, you're not making any kind of drastic changes in sound check. Um, Now I'm sure, are you guys mobile every week?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. That's a big factor too, because we're mobile and we have to set everything and tear everything down every week. That also complicates things when it comes to like the presets and everything, because not everything is always the same as far as the environment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I imagine that's a challenge, but it also kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit. And, um, but you're fixed to be in that other world now where it's gonna be like the same stage, same thing every week.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. I mean, partially I'm excited just because I'm sick of setting that thing up and tearing it down every week.
Yeah.
I'll
So
be able to show up to church an hour later at least every week.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah, that makes me think of like the summer where like I ran sound for a camp for a week,
Mhm.
and we were in this basketball gym, and like the coming in and setting that all up from scratch and everything, um, you know, it took a while to from ground zero to build that and get the mix good and everything. And it was like just by the time like the last night of the camp, it was like, oh, finally, it was like let's get this thing tuned in, because it just simply did not have the time with everything else going on to you know, really dial it in.
Right. Yeah. Especially in a gymnasium,
Yeah, that was
which
terrible.
all summer camps meet in a gymnasium. So that's
Yeah, yeah,
surprising.
I had to
I'm
do.
thinking back to my summer camp days, and it was always in this non-air conditioned gymnasium.
Yeah, yeah, it is a bear to try to EQ in a room like that, to try to, especially if like it would be nice to be able to like run some pink noise, you know, and get like a reference RTA mic or whatever and
Right.
dial that in. But I didn't have that luxury, so you have to kind of use your ears in that situation, and it's
Right.
so
We meet in an auditorium right now, but before we were meeting where we are now, we were in an elementary school where we met in the gymnasium, and we actually purchased these giant curtains to basically block off the area that we were going to use, and then also I mean, they're like 12 feet tall, so it just really helped us be able to control the sound rather than it bouncing around everywhere, you know.
yeah. Yeah. So so you're running like live amps on that kind of stage?
We are,
Yeah.
yeah. I have, like I've said, I've used a couple different options to run direct. Um, and that's, that's also, I'm always trying new things. So I'm also on the what do you call it? I'm on the Helix. I don't want to say bandwagon because I don't have a Helix, but I've definitely thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
But the problem, I mean, I guess it's not a problem. The only thing that the only the only way that I perform right now is in church, so it makes sense to have something like that. So I don't know. I can't commit to that sort of thing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely see, you know, tempted by the Helix. Um, I would. It would make life easier to not have all this gear. I mean, matter of fact, like I went from 3 amps down to 1 amp, and now I'm thinking like going no amps, which is probably a terrible idea. But
Right.
yeah, like, and then I got to play a Kemper recently, and I was like, that's pretty cool, you know.
Right.
Um, I can't justify that price point right now,
Sure. Sure.
but yeah,
Yeah.
the
I was.
Helix kind of fits that price point. I think most guys are looking at, you know, who are church players.
It really is like very reasonable for what it does. And then they have the Helix LT is out the one that's slightly cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was actually Balaguer, the guitar company. They have a gear fest at their shop every year. So I was out there a month or two ago, and actually Nathaniel Berniker was out there too. So I met up with him, but we were both playing the Helix they had there, and it just like kind of blew us both away. It's the first time that I think it was the first time he played. It was definitely the first time that I played one, and I was really surprised. Especially the drive sounds. Yeah, they kind of blew me away. I hate to say it because I always made fun of Jamie Davis and other people for having one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I think for me, like, it'd have to be, for me to go that route, like, I'd have to justify, well, I still am keeping my tube amp, just so if here in a few
Right,
months,
right.
like, if I want to abandon this, I'm not having to find another amp, you know. And I guess that it's kind of like, at this point, after having, flipping and having so many different amps, and I think a lot of guys would agree with this, um, it's like a safety net. Like, it's familiar to me.
Yep.
I know how to easily get what I want out of, a tube amp, and I don't know. Just going completely digital kind of scares me a little bit, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I am like completely a simpleton when it comes to this stuff. I like as few knobs on my amps as possible. I'm not the guy who's gonna search for different patches and do all the updates all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just not a techie guy, which, you know, kind of holds me back sometimes in the gear world. But, I like what I like, and I like things to be simple and to get a good sound, being able to dial it in without spending hours doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something I kind of was Chris Sly when we had him a few months back at our church, and
Sure.
he was showing me his rig, his fly rig, and he was
I watched that video that you
yeah,
posted.
yeah, he
Yeah, that was cool.
I'm blanking on what that software is called right now.
Yeah,
Bias,
that's it. Yep.
yeah.
Bias.
And it sounded amazing. And he was telling me he had one of those the smaller Helix boards you were just mentioning,
Yep.
and he was using it for some effects. And he was telling me that yeah, you can. I mean, he was like, I could run just this, but he was like, I would really have to dig in and edit these patches and really, really like tweak this and spend some time with it. And he was like, I simply have not had the time to do that. And so I know what this does and how to get it, and that's why I use this.
Right. Yeah, one thing that is really appealing to me is the Helix, the HX pedal, because you could still run it through an amp, which you have to do because there's not direct option with the HX, and it's less than half the price of the full Helix board. So I don't know, that's really appealing. I was talking to a couple of guys about that, because even with that, I could still use my drive pedals if I don't like, because it's a smaller size.
Yeah, it'd be actually a really great all-in-one kind of Swiss Army knife to have on your board for things that you don't typically want to shell out
Right,
money for, or.
right, and we're talking about a price that's only like just a little bit more than like a Timeline or a Big Sky or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be. I would love to have one on my board. I'm not usually dropping $500, $600 on effects.
No, no, me neither. I just my newest pedal is from Like My Pedals. I don't know if you're familiar with them,
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm kind of blown away. The prices are just crazy reasonable, and he always does these sales, especially like on around holidays. So I think the it was July 4th maybe, or Memorial Day or something. And so I got a dual drive. It's like a Temi clone on one side and then a Marshall style on the other side, and it just sounds so good to me. Um, and yeah, that's my newest one, and it like just the price point is crazy reasonable compared to like some of the boutique dual drives that are out there.
yeah,
And I've used some of those. I went through like the double barrel and the Pearl and a couple other ones, and this one is by far my favorite so far.
no, why is that? Why is it your favorite?
Um, I mean, well, for one thing, I know what I like, so
Hmm.
you can can pick from his menu of like all the different circuits that he has. Um, um, and with the Pearl, I really liked the low gain side, the touch drive side,
Mm-hmm.
but the higher gain punch drive sound was like almost unusable to me. I have a Fuzzrocious cattail. It's like a kind of a rat style pedal.
Yeah.
And so I would just use the low gain side of the Pearl, and just I'd always use that as like my higher gain pedal because I just thought it sounded so much better. I don't know. And then the double barrel, it's a fine pedal, but it's like a Morning Glory, and then it's like a TS style on the other side, which I don't know. It's fine. I just kind of got sick of it.
Yeah. 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 I think it's like finding your. I see guys, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, like constantly changing their drive sections and things like that,
Right.
because I think as players, like we're always evolving and defining
Sure.
what we like, and we want to discover um, something that like maybe legendary that has been tweaked, like a legendary circuit. We want
Right.
to find out what was the magic, why do people gravitate towards that, and then you see people like there's something hits the market and everybody wants that, but
Yep.
then and then there's people who that sticks with them, but then others it's like no, that's not really the flavor I'm looking for. And it's like it's just a journey people are on until they kind of find, oh, this is what I like, this I know how to use this, and
Right.
this works for me.
Yeah. One thing that I've, as a rule of thumb now, I've been so like if I see something that I really want, or something that's really hyped, I make myself wait a certain amount of time before purchasing it because chances are I might be thinking about something else completely in a couple weeks. And I've actually been doing that with my kids too. And I've been sort of, because now they're at the age where they have their own money, or they get birthday money or whatever, and they're like, I really want this. I was like, why don't you wait a couple weeks? Because
Yeah.
I feel like you're gonna want something different in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, I've kind of come to that rule of thumb: if I can talk myself out of something, then I don't need it at all.
Right. I mean, do you really need any of this stuff? I
No,
mean, I think that this is your career, so you would need a guitar, but do you really need 9 pedals to go along with it? Probably not.
no, and I had a rude awakening the other day. I was letting our guitarist use my Blues Junior, and he's been using it for probably like half a year now. And yeah, I thought it sounded pretty good, and um, anyways, I told him, I said, look, I've got to sell that amp. I'm feeling bad about this. I'm like, I, I had this Line 6 Spider amp
Yeah.
that I brought in. And I was like, look, I'm just going to put that there, and, we'll kind of go from there. And he came in and he's like, man, this sounds really good. Of course, he just plays to the clean channel. This sounds really, really good. And I was just kind of thinking to myself, oh, is it because I've become a gear snob that I'm looking at this amp and like, it bothers me
Right.
that I'm having to make you
Right.
use this.
Yeah.
But at the other point, I'm like, it didn't sound that bad.
Yeah.
Especially, the kind of player where he just plugs straight in and plays the clean channel. And
The answer is yes, you have become a gear snob.
yes, I have.
But we all have, and that's okay. I mean, you like what you like, but the fact is that some of that stuff that is looked down upon because of the brand really is kind of good. Maybe not the Line 6 Spider, but there is stuff that can be had for cheaper that is looked down upon that actually sounds pretty good.
Absolutely, and I think speaking to that, like, and is like it does sound good doing that one thing, but it has its
Yeah.
limitations. And I think like most players, like several years back when they were buying these things, like quickly ran into no, this has its limitations. That's
Right.
why I need this other thing.
Yeah. So kind of case in point, my only acoustic right now, I used to be like mainly an acoustic player when I was gigging a few years ago. I solely played acoustic in that project, but so I had a nice gig Gibson, I've had nice Martins and stuff. But then when I started playing in church, I just was never playing them. So the only acoustic I have right now is a Fender F15. It's from the 70s, and it's like a triple O body style and shape and size. But it just sounds so good, and I found it at a flea market for like next to nothing,
Oh
and I
wow.
love it. I pick it up all the time. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was gross. I had to scrape gunk off the fretboard and clean it real good, but for under $75, I got this guitar, which I love.
Yeah, that's was one of the things Adam Dolhanic he asked here in the group, and he said, how come that you can get these guitars that aren't popular, but like they look really cool and you make them sound good. Like,
Yep.
is that kind of like a mojo thing for you?
Like for this guitar specifically, I don't know. Like I gravitate right now. I'm really into the triple O size. I've always been kind of a dreadnought guy, but I would love to have both. I'd love to have a
Yeah.
really nice dreadnought and a really nice triple O. But especially because I don't play out with an acoustic at all right now, like just to have one to pick up, it's a really good thing to pick up. But yes, part of that is mojo, but also it's just a really good guitar. The reason I like it is because it sounds really good and it feels really good to play. I mean, I've played Fender acoustics that were garbage, and
Mm-hmm.
this one just isn't.
Yeah. That's. I would love to kind of run across one of those. I'm familiar with that one. I did play one of the old like 1960 ones, like that had a weird like steel bar that ran inside of it. Are you familiar with
Oh
those?
yeah, yep, yep.
They have an interesting sound. Like you'd see like a lot of the old like old rock and roll players, or like I've seen like Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan, like with those in their hands, and it, they had a really unique sound, but it's not something that like went mainstream,
Right.
where it's like everybody's seeking that sound. But I think that there are some incredible sleeper guitars out there that people just aren't aware of.
Yep, absolutely. And then when so case in point, so like the PVT series, like the PVT 60 and the PVT 15,
Mm-hmm.
PVT 40, those are guitars that 10 years ago nobody wanted those things, but then all of a sudden somebody played one like these are kind of cool and they sound good, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted those sleeper guitars, so now they're all like $600 or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure there's lots of other guitars like that out there that just haven't become cool yet.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I I kind of went through that phase with amplifiers and things like that, like finding things that are popping up on Craigslist and trying to
Yep.
find out like what's the magic behind these. You hear about them, and even if it's just to buy it, and then like even if I flip it for this next to hardly any kind of net gain, like just it's kind of like I want to try that and check that off my list.
Yep. Yeah, I love vintage amps too. I've had vintage Fenders and vintage Supros and stuff like that, and they always sound great. And I mean, especially with amps for whatever reason, like the mojo factor is crazy high.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm always worried about the reliability factor. So like I had this little like 5 watt Supro amp, this little like one power tube or yeah, one power tube amp, just like this little lunchbox size, and it was so cool and it sounded so good. But I'm like, can I really? But it was from like the '60s. I'm like, can I really trust this thing if I'm in the middle of an hour and a half church service that is not going to go out? And really, the answer is no. I didn't trust it. That's why I never played it. But
Yeah, yeah. It's like today I just got rid of my last vintage amp. And it was a 71 Pro Reverb, and I got it, and it like I cracked the thing open, checking it, and it had never been recapped. Had the old original caps on it. They didn't look like they had warts on them or anything, but
right, right.
I got to playing it and it sounded really good. And then like a few months later, like as I think I've had it for about 7 8 months now. It it started like cracking and popping and fizzing and the volume going up and
Right.
down while I was playing. And it's like I know what to do to fix this, but I don't have the time anymore to recap this and retube it. And then like, there's certain things like you want to change like the dropping resistors go into the tubes, like the ones that handle a lot of voltage. You and you do those things to kind of beef them up and make them reliable again. And it's like once you disturb the nest, it's like
Right.
you just go you don't never know you never know will you come out at the end of that rabbit hole.
Right.
And
And amp repair can just be very costly too.
it can it's like for and it's sad to say that you can sell an amp in that kind of condition and you fix it and you're not going to get much more for it being
Right.
fixed.
Yep.
And so I was glad like I was able to sell this thing to a guy who said he was a tech, so I felt pretty good about that.
Oh,
Like,
that's cool. Yeah, then you don't feel bad about selling them an amp in that condition. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So I think for now, like I'm kind of done with the vintage amp thing, and try to find some more reliable things. But yeah, I'm totally. There's a lot of mojo there with all that old stuff, and
Yeah.
love to kind of see what lies behind. Turn those stones over and see what lies behind them, and see what the magic is, because obviously a lot
Yeah.
of these things have legendary people who've used them, and you know
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the more that I mean, I've been engrossed in this guitar community and culture for, at least 5 6 7 years or whatever. And the more that I like get to know builders and know their stories and stuff, it's like that's the stuff that I'm drawn towards just
hmm
because I know that these people are good people and they're like for instance, like Fuzz Roches. I've owned Fuzz Roches pedals one or the other for 5 years now just because I heard Ryan on a podcast and telling about his story and about his family and his kids and his wife, how they're involved in the company. I just thought it was so cool. So I started buying his pedals. And I think they're awesome pedals, but the fact is I'm loyal to that company because I really like him as a person. I met him at a show one time. So yeah, just really, I mean, there's thousands of companies to choose from, and new ones are popping up all the time. But it's cool to support people that you know are good people who are like-minded and are making good products.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this whole boutique gear community, whatever, it's really interesting. And I feel like in some of the same circles that we run, that if there's somebody who comes in and like they're a little shady, like
Yeah.
it's not long till everybody kind of exposes that.
Oh yeah, it just kind of polices itself.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I've seen so many like upstarts and people come along and everybody's getting it, and then a few months later, oh, this dude, he stole my money. And it's
Right.
it's like it's really good. That community is really good about policing it, making sure that if somebody has a good reputation in there, I'm a lot more willing to invest my money there.
Sure. Yep. I mean, there's always going to be like, I've always been a Fender guy, so I'll always just love Telecasters and Fenders in general. But I like to like I spent money on a Creston Fender because I really liked what he was doing and I liked his philosophy. So
How long
yeah,
have you had that one again?
I've had that one 2 years now. Um, I only remember because on the neck plate, 2016 is engraved on there, so I always remember
Nice,
when I
nice.
got it. Yeah, yeah, that's a great guitar. I love it.
So did you do like a build with that? Like, did you
I
commission a
did.
build?
Yep, I
Awesome.
did. Yeah, it's like the first and pretty much only. Well, no, I did that with Adam Magoon and the Bel Air amp also, but yeah, you commission a build and you get to design the guitar, and that's just super fun, and it's exactly what you want, um, and yeah, I don't know. I not to be a downer, but uh, I had a our son passed away right around that time. He was, I mean, he was born premature and he only lived 24 hours, but it was like right at that time when I was commissioning this guitar. So like I sort of designed it around this baby blue theme because that's all that you see
Yeah.
in the hospital, when you have a baby. But like in my mind, I sort of had this connection between that guitar and him. So it's just, it's a guitar that I hold very dear to my heart. And there was even, when I got it, there was like a little blemish in the finish just for whatever reason. And I contacted Crest and he's like, oh, please send it back and we'll fix it up. And I was like, you know what? I can't, like, I don't even want to like not have this guitar for another couple months or whatever it'll take. So I don't know. That's just, it's just a connection that you have to certain pieces of gear for certain reasons. And yeah, I love that guitar. I don't think I'll ever get rid of that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did that, with that guitar and that event happening, did that bring you to a place and, kind of in your journey, like where something changed?
And what journey? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what
Like,
you mean.
in your musical journey?
Oh, right, right. Um, I don't know if I can answer that exactly, but one thing that I always remember is that whenever we came home from the hospital after that happened, like the first thing I did when my other two kids were in bed and I'm sorry, my other three kids were in bed and my wife went to bed and I came downstairs and I just pulled out the guitar and I was just looping on this loop pedal and just started playing these loops and it was just so therapeutic to sit down and just
Yeah.
just make music.
Yeah. That's something. There's like I found like music isn't like everything. I mean, there's so many things that are more important than music. I believe,
Sure. Yeah.
but like it does like for a musician, it's good for the soul to kind of process it that way and kind of let it out and you know um, just I think music can be very healing and do things that other things can't. If you're a musician.
Absolutely. And that's, if I was a painter, I could have came down here and painted, but I'm not. I'm a musician, so that could be anything to anybody, but yeah, as a musician, I just, it really was therapeutic and healing just to sit here like with myself and even with God and just sort of just play whatever.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, I wanted to ask you about. I've heard a few projects that you've worked on, like you did a theme song for a while for that Flippin' Flippers did for a while, and and you've mentioned kind of working on some recording and things like that. I want to kind of dig into that for a minute and let you talk about kind of what brought you to where you were recording a little bit more.
Sure. I mean, like I said, I'm kind of a Luddite when it comes to the tech side of things, but so I haven't always been great with recording. I've always attempted it ever since I was like a teenager, recording on like those little Tascam, Porta Studios and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, but I've used GarageBand here and there over the years, but so I actually was off work for 4 months starting the beginning of April of this year. I tore my Achilles. So the nature of my work, I drive for UPS. I'm a UPS driver, so I could not work at all until I
Mm-hmm.
was fully healed. So for 4 months, I sat at home, and for 2 or 3 of those months, my kids were in school all day, and my wife was usually at work. So I sat at home alone. So I made a point from day one. I was like, I know how this goes. Like, I cannot sit on the couch and watch TV or, just not be productive, or I'll just slip into a depression here or something. So I made it a point to come downstairs. Like, lucky to have this separate music room down in our basement where I can just kind of come and work on stuff. But I really dove into the recording side of stuff and I kind of laid out, like, I probably got 8 or 9 songs, if not finished, at least started. And I just sort of built this small setup. And And I mean, there's people that I know, even people that you've talked to who like know this stuff in and out, and I'm not that guy. But like, I have a Focusrite, Scarlett. I have a couple of Mackie Studio monitors and GarageBand, and I just kind of learned how to do stuff and learned how to do it well with what I have. And yeah, that was cool. Just sort of putting my time into something productive, even if nothing ever came of those songs or will come of those songs, even if they're not finished or never will be finished. Like it was just kind of like a healing time, literally, and like through music.
Yeah. So like, d- are those kind of shelved? Like, do you have any plan to do anything with the songs that you were working on?
Yeah, I don't know because like so so if I were to start a project right now, like a gigging band, I don't even know what that would look like. Like a couple of the songs I recorded were like very guitar driven, like rock and roll with a little bit of indie influence or something like that. And then the other stuff was like straight up like acoustic, like stuff like that. Um, but that being said, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I don't really know. I made it a point not to like give myself any like finite like this is what I am going to do and this is what I'm going to do with them because I would it just kind of would have defeated the purpose of just coming down here and just doing whatever I want for a couple
Yeah.
months.
Yeah. Well,
But
that.
I also got sorry, I wanted to mention that so I've always like wrote and record guitar parts. That's how I always write songs is on the guitar. But I got this MIDI keyboard and I borrowed my friend's this little micro chord synth,
Mhm.
and just adding that stuff like totally opened up like a whole new world of writing for me because like I said I took piano lessons when I was young, so I'm not good by any stretch, but I have a base of playing chords and the structure of chords and stuff. So that was really cool just to like kind of do something new and write from a new perspective, and kind of the guitar was not the focus, but so I was writing sort of on the keyboard or on the synth and then just kind of added guitar parts later.
Yeah. Well, something came to mind. We were talking about like limitations of gear and learn how to use it and everything. I can't help but wonder. You mentioned the Focusrite and using those studio monitors and a microphone. What did you learn anything out of that process that maybe you didn't realize before, and maybe like learned how to create something like with mic placement and wait.
Oh, definitely. I'm trying to think of anything specific, but that's like what I did the whole time was just like learning how to do this stuff. Um, so honestly, like YouTube was very helpful with. I mean, GarageBand has its limitations, but it's what I know and it's what I have. So I'd go on YouTube and like, how do I get the perfect vocal with GarageBand? And there's always 10 or 50 or 100 videos
Yeah.
of some guy being like, this is how you do it. You put this much compression, you put this much reverb, and then this much delay, and you do it in this order. And I would follow some of those instructions. And I'm like, holy cow, this sounds like really good, much better than what I've ever done before anyway. So that was really cool just to be able to put out something that for me was very good quality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas before, like I said, I'm not a recording guy. I have lots of friends who are just very good at that stuff, and that's not something that I ever kind of put my time into. But it was fun to sort of learn about that stuff along
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah. I imagine that's kind of like we were talking about guitar amps earlier, and like if you have like something that you're really comfortable with and kind of you know how to dial it in, it's kind of like a recording rig, and that's why maybe like some of the pros use what they do. But like when you have something with limitations, it's not that it's trash. It's just like learning how to work within those limitations and what that it does and what it does well and what it doesn't do well, and trying to, you know, play to your strengths.
Exactly. Yeah, and now that I've sort of dove into this world a little bit, like at least dipped my toe into the pool or whatever, Um, I would really like to get really good on GarageBand, and then if I master that, or if I get good at it, then step up to Pro Tools or Logic or whatever the next step up
Yeah.
would be. I mean,
Yeah.
Pro Tools is probably a couple steps up, but
Yeah. I'm kind of in that same boat. I'm kind of stuck in GarageBand, and like I had intentions of, oh, I just need to go dive into Logic or something, but I'm kind of like, you know what? Like, I understand how this works, and I'm sure I could probably afford to know more, but like, this is kind of where I live, and this is how my workflow and how I create. It
yeah.
feels good, comfortable.
Yeah, and that's kind of another instance of like I've always been not embarrassed, but like a little self-conscious about the fact that like so many people are good at recording guitarists. I'm talking about like in the guitar world specifically, but like it's something that I've never given much thought to just because like I didn't have the equipment or I just didn't care that much about it, even though I'd like to be able to record my own demos and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
But putting all that aside, when I just sat down with myself and took the time to learn it, I don't know, it was really cool. It was a good couple months just to. It's something that I will never have the time to do again. Hopefully, I won't be injured again where I have to sit at home for 4 months. But
yeah. I can't even imagine. I've never probably been at home longer than a week like that.
no, me neither. And it was, I mean, and I work a lot. I work 50 to 70 hours depending on the time of the year. So like, it was very strange. Which I knew that like, you hear about people being in those situations and they get into a funk and they sit on the couch, and I was just like, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be productive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also helped that we decided in that time that we're going to move, so I had some projects and stuff to do as I crutched around the house and painted walls and whatever, get our house ready to sell.
So did you guys make the move and you're back to work and everything at this point?
Yeah, I am back to work. This is my third week back. We're moving next week, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, so the housing market in this area is just crazy. So we sold our house in less than 2 days, and it was very quick. So yeah, I'm really excited. We just needed more space, and I have we're actually are having a house built, which is really cool. And then the basement is finished, but there's a whole unfinished space down there, which I'm going to use as a music room. So then I can kind of finish it however I want. So I'm excited to get myself set up in there
Oh yeah, that sounds
in the next few
amazing.
weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to see if that kind of pushes you a creative direction.
Yeah, I think it will. I think that matters. Like having a good environment to write and make music.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious about something.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where we got to know each other is in the gear slum. But you started a thing uh, where you would take these selfies, and what I'm assuming is your church's bathroom, right before church, and sleeve link thing. Can you tell me a little bit about that and the idea behind that and everything?
Yes, there's a deep philosophy behind this. I don't know if I can get into all of it. It's a long backstory. No, I'm kidding. I don't even think that I came up with it, to be honest. I feel like it was, man, how did that start? I really don't know. I don't think that I started it, but I definitely, continued it and took it and ran with it. And I'm pretty much the only one doing it now, but I'm very prolific with it, so I'm gonna keep it going.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was that something that maybe was borrowed out of like the PW culture? Because
No, it was definitely. I feel like it was something that was talked about in the Gear Slum podcast, but maybe one of those guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I really don't remember.
that were
I
you,
think it was. I think it was started in that group somehow, or in the podcast. I can't remember.
so was Red for Ned? Was that like something that came about like after you started doing that, or was that
Oh
before?
man, bringing stuff up that I can't even. I forgot about that completely. No, that was in the podcast too. I'm almost positive that that was in the podcast too. I'm trying to think what that was about though. Wear red for Ned. Yeah, I can't remember. I'm gonna bring it up in the Gear Slam group though, because I'm curious now. Oh no, that was their. So the Gear Slam had when they came out with their first T-shirt design. It was a red T-shirt.
Yeah.
That's all I remember. It had something to do with that. I can't remember who Ned was or what that was about.
New episode day, I think.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, I don't know who came up with that either. Maybe it was me or maybe it was somebody else. But yeah, I definitely used that one a few times.
Well,
Just a bunch of tomfoolery over there in that group.
yeah. Well, that's it's been a lot of fun. You know, seeing that and it's like I think Coach Schneider every now and then will like come back with one too. You know, it's just kind of funny and.
Yeah, it's mostly just me and Code carrying the torch for just the absurdity of it.
Yeah. No, I think it's awesome. Well, so is there anything else you'd like to add or talk about?
Anything else? I don't know. So I'm thinking about starting my own podcast just to muddy up the Guitar Gear podcast waters a little more.
I think everybody should have a podcast. So
I do too. It's funny because so I started a podcast probably 4 years ago with my friend, a buddy of mine here locally, Ian, and it was a Guitar Gear podcast, and we recorded a few episodes, and then I just kind of got like swamped at work. It was right around the Christmas season where UPS is busy delivering everybody's Amazon boxes and whatnot, and so it just kind of fell by the wayside, and that was kind of around the time when like a bunch of new guitar-related podcasts came out. So then I was like, you know what, I don't need to be just another podcast, but then I just like was thinking about it, and it's like, you know what, I love two things. I love guitars, and I love music, and I love podcasts. That's three things technically, but but like at work, I listen to podcasts all day long, every day. So, I mean, I listen to all these guitar podcasts, and they're all a little bit different, and I like them all. So it's like, I think that I have a unique take on this whole community, what the idea that I have, and I don't even know when or how it'll get up and running, but, I asked you a few questions technically about the technical side of things, because I'm not exactly sure how would be the best way to do it, but I don't know.
Yeah,
that is a TBD, but that's kind of what is on my mind at this point.
Yeah, well, that's something that I would say, like, if you want to do, just jump head first in and do it. That's kind of, it's just trial and error, for me. And, if it's something that you love to do, you'll just keep doing it.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, even if nobody listens, I really want to do it. I think it'll be a fun creative outlet for me. And like speaking to you here, it's the first time I've ever talked to you, and I think that's really cool because we've conversed a lot online for years. So it's kind of cool that you get to meet and talk to people in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's like podcasting for me, and I can't speak for every podcaster, but it's about like extending our world just a little bit beyond like our immediate, circle.
Yep.
And like it kind of catches wings and it extends your reach a little bit and like kind of exposes you to what's outside of, like for me, Mississippi, for you would be, Pennsylvania. Just kind of, because it's like whatever you do, whatever you create, there's going to be people who come alongside of it who dig it, and then like, the internet's kind of like a place where you can find those people, and it's just interesting that you can find people who are like almost like your doppelgangers across the world.
Yeah, and it's like that's what's so great about podcasts. I mean, you might be a subgenre of a subgenre of a subgenre or whatever, but there's going to be somebody out there who wants to listen
Yeah,
and likes what you do.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, kind of like you said, just diving head first into it. I mean, not to speak to your like beginning episodes much because I can't quite remember them, but I feel like you get better like the more you do this. I think that even as like an interviewer and conversationally, I've really enjoyed all of your latest episodes. So
Thanks.
kudos.
Well, thanks, man. It's like flexing a muscle. You keep working at it and working
Yeah,
out, and it's like you hopefully you get better at it.
sure. Yeah, other than that, I can't think of anything else. Um, my wife and I just celebrated our 13th anniversary, so that was cool. And I think you just had an anniversary too.
Yeah, yeah, our ninth, and so yeah, it's crazy. It didn't seem like it's been that long for me, anyways.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
yeah, 13 years sounds like a long time, but yeah, it's crazy how fast stuff goes now. So,
yeah. I was thinking today actually. I was trying to calculate like how many years I've known my wife, and I was like, let's see. It had been like 14 years at this point, and that sounds crazy. So, like 13 years doesn't sound like a lot to me when I think of it in that terms. I was like, there's a lot of life that happens, in those years, but like, it's like, in some ways, like that doesn't seem like a long time at all.
yeah, you're right. It's all relative.
Yeah, totally. Well, man, it's been awesome to kind of get to just finally chat and hear kind of where you come from and you know how you're creating music and processes you're going through, and I just had a really good time getting to talk to you about that.
Yeah, man, thanks so much. I enjoyed it as well. And like I said, I appreciate what you do and what all the other guys do with the podcast and the community. It's been a cool place to get to know people and be a part of over the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can't wait to see you know if you decide to do that podcast, what happens with it. I'm definitely eager to listen to that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll obviously let everybody know if that comes to fruition.
Well, before we go here, I just wanted to remind everybody that would love to, if this is your first time listening to the episode, if you would follow us and just subscribe and just check us out, and you can find us on Facebook. We've got a really fun Facebook group, and the website, thecliftonworleyshow.com. But also wanted to tell everybody and do a shout out to a couple people. Started a Patreon, so you can find that on Patreon, the Clifton Worley Show. And just want to do a shout out to Michael Newman and Co Schneider for being the first Patreons for the show, and just want to invite any of the listeners go check that out if that's something you would be interested in doing. Even at the $1 a month level would just be tremendous and very well appreciated. So just want to thank you listeners for all you've done to support the show, and hopefully for I can keep continuing to make this show, and it's been a blast, and I just want to create for you listeners. So thank y'all, and thank you, Adam, for coming on, and it's been a really good time, man.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you.
All right, thank you.